If the universe handed you the mind of Einstein, the drive of Elon Musk, the vision of Walt Disney, and the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr., but then said, you can only use it if you dare, would you say yes? Would you actually step forward? Or would you stare at that door and hesitate? Just like you always have? Don't lie to yourself. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. You are not suffering from a lack of potential. You're suffering from a refusal to awaken it. The world isn't short on geniuses. It's short on people who believe they have permission to be one. That's the real reason you're stuck. Not your circumstances, not your job, not your childhood. It's you asleep at the wheel of your own power, distracted by the noise, waiting for the world to give you what you already are. From the moment you were born, they started whispering in your ear. Be realistic. Don't get your hopes up. Play it safe. Follow the rules. Fit in. And somewhere along the way, you listen. Not because you were weak, but because you were human, conditioned, trained, domesticated like a wild lion, made to believe it's a house cat. They fed you fear like it was food. They taught you to shrink so others wouldn't feel small. And now you're left with a mind that was once limitless, now wearing chains called logic and a leash called doubt. That is not your genius. That is your programming. But if you're still breathing, you can unlearn it. Because genius is not about being smarter than the rest. It's about breaking through the lie that you ever weren't. There's a reason Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. It wasn't motivational fluff. It was prophecy. Every empire ever built, every breakthrough ever discovered, every idea that ever reshaped humanity started with one fragile, foolish, dangerous belief. I can. That belief is your passport. Without it, you're stranded at the gate of your potential. Think of Thomas Edison. Over 10 failed experiments. Do you think he was counting the failures? No. He believed in a world that didn't yet exist, and that belief pulled it into reality. You give up because the Wi-Fi goes out. Let that sink in. You're not lazy, you're misaligned. You're not talentless, you're terrified. Because belief comes with a cost, responsibility. If you do believe in your inner genius, then you can't blame the world for ignoring it. And that is where most people fold. Now let's talk about clarity. Most people think they need motivation. No. What you need is clarity. Motivation gets tired. Clarity doesn't sleep. Clarity slices through noise. It doesn't beg for focus. It commands it. Abraham Lincoln said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." That's clarity. That's preparation meeting purpose. But you're sprinting through life with a dull blade, wondering why nothing cuts through. You scroll through inspiration, hoping it'll spark something. But inspiration is not lightning, it's friction. It comes from motion, not waiting. Until you are clear about what your genius looks like, you will continue chasing shadows. Clarity is not found in the world. It's forged in the fire of decision. Walt Disney was fired for lacking imagination. Let that echo. A man who built kingdoms of wonder was once told he had none. Why? Because vision isn't visible until it's built. People won't believe in your genius until the blueprint becomes bricks. But that's not your concern. The greatest minds in history were mocked, doubted, ridiculed. That's the price of seeing the future before others do. Vision is not about what is, it's about what must become. Elon Musk didn't build rockets because it made sense. He built them because he couldn't live in a world where humanity stayed grounded. What about you? What future haunts your mind when the world is quiet? What idea won't let you sleep? If you don't honor that vision, you will spend your life watching others build lesser dreams with greater belief. Purpose is not some cosmic lottery ticket you wait to be handed. It's not hiding in a book, a course, or a job title. Purpose is forged like iron in the fires of what you're willing to suffer for. You think greatness is born from talent? No. It's born from obsession, from conviction, from waking up every day with a pain that only progress can cure. Michelangelo said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." That is purpose. You must ask yourself, what injustice, what void, what problem eats at you so deeply that it would be hell not to solve it? That's your purpose. Most people never unleash their genius because they never confront what they care about so deeply it terrifies them. And so they live numb, distracted, scrolling, busy, but empty, alive, but asleep. But you, if you want to awaken your inner genius, must choose sacred responsibility over comfort. Because genius is not a gift. It's a vow. Here's a harsh truth. Your inner genius doesn't need more feelings. It needs more discipline. Discipline is how you take the thunder of your potential and shape it into lightning that strikes the earth. Nikola Tesla had ideas that could have changed the world a century earlier, but lacked the discipline to protect and finish them. Meanwhile, Edison, not as brilliant, outworked him, outbuilt him, and became the name history remembers. That's not fair, but it's real. Your genius doesn't care how inspired you feel. It only cares what you build when no one's watching. Discipline is not punishment. It's devotion. It's showing up for your future self when your current self is tired, weak, or distracted. You will never meet your inner genius if you keep ghosting the grind. Greatness is daily, not dramatic. You say you believe in your potential. Prove it with action. Nothing else counts. Not your affirmations. Not your vision board. Not your late night plans that never see the sunrise. Until your hands move, your mind is lying to you. Carnegie didn't build an empire because he waited for certainty. He moved while the world was still unsure. Do you want to know the difference between people who make history and people who read about it? One group starts before they're ready. They act, they fail forward. They build momentum while everyone else is still asking for permission. Action is your genius's oxygen. Without it, your ideas, no matter how brilliant, will rot in the basement of someday. And someday is not a day of the week. If discipline is the engine, gratitude is the oil. Because when the world doesn't see your genius yet, when your work feels invisible, when your effort feels unseen, it is gratitude that keeps your soul from going bitter. Gratitude doesn't mean settling. It means seeing clearly. Thomas Jefferson said, "Nothing can stop the man with the right mental attitude from achieving his goal." Gratitude is that attitude. It's not blind positivity. It's radical perspective. You can't unlock genius with a heart full of resentment. You must love the grind even when it's brutal. You must thank the mountain for existing because climbing it makes you worthy of the view. Every failure is feedback. Every delay is discipline training. Every rejection is redirection toward the masterpiece you were born to complete. Let's make something very clear. The moment you step toward your genius, life will push back. It has to. Not because life is cruel, but because genius must be earned. Adversity is the exam. Only the resilient graduate. Lincoln lost more elections than he won before he became the most transformational president in American history. Disney went bankrupt. Bezos was laughed out of boardrooms. What do they all have in common? They got up again and again and again. Resilience is not about never falling. It's about rising faster than you fall. You don't find your inner genius. You fight for it battle by battle, brick by brick, rising every time life tries to knock the purpose out of your chest. A mind that believes it already knows cannot grow. Genius is not static. It's fluid. It adapts. It absorbs. It reinvents. The reason so many fade into mediocrity isn't because they lack intelligence. It's because they refuse to remain students. You must outgrow your own ego. Even the greats had mentors. Carnegie had Schwab. Jobs had Wozniak. Oprah had Maya Angelou. Your genius isn't a monument. It's a river. Keep it moving. Keep it learning. Keep it humbled by the vastness of what you still don't know. Because once you stop learning, you start dying. And your genius, it suffocates under the weight of your pride. So let me ask you again, what's stopping you? No, really, strip away the noise, the excuses, the justifications. What is truly holding you back? You already have the mind. You already feel the calling. You already see flashes of what you could become. So why not now? Why not wake up for real and refuse to let the next decade slip through your fingers like the last one did? Why not silence the inner critic, crush the paralysis, and demand to meet the version of you this world hasn't seen yet? The world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more truth. It needs more people who are brave enough to go all in on their inner genius, even if they have to go alone. Because here's the final truth. You were born brilliant, but brilliance means nothing if you never turn on the light. Most people never unleash their genius, not because they can't think big, but because they can't feel deeply without falling apart. Your genius doesn't just require intelligence. It demands emotional mastery, the ability to stay centered in chaos, to channel rage into resolve, to transform fear into fire. You think Steve Jobs built Apple because he was calm? No. He was obsessed, brilliant, volatile, but he learned to focus his fire, not let it burn down everything in its path. You want to create at a high level? Then master your inner storms. Because until you can hold your emotions in one hand and your vision in the other, you'll keep dropping both. The inner genius is a wild stallion. It will not be tamed by panic or insecurity or emotional reactivity. Train your heart not to be numb, but to be unshakable. This is the work no one claps for. The work in the dark. The work that separates the almost great from the truly iconic. Let's go deeper. Because behind every "I'm not ready," "I'm not good enough," or "I don't have what it takes," is a wound you still haven't faced. Maybe it was a teacher who laughed when you spoke your dream aloud. Maybe it was a parent who only saw your flaws. Maybe it was a moment small, forgettable to others, but defining to you. Your genius has been held hostage by that moment ever since. And here's the bitter truth. You can't outwork a wound you refuse to face. You can build $1 billion business, but if the boy or girl inside you still feels unworthy, you'll sabotage it. You'll hide behind busyness. You'll choke in the spotlight. You'll dim your light just enough not to be seen too clearly. So hear me now. The next breakthrough in your genius won't come from learning something new. It will come from healing what's old. Not to wallow in it, but to own it, rise from it, and finally say, this pain made me, it doesn't own me. Genius does not reveal itself in crowds. It whispers in the silence. It visits you when you dare to unplug from opinions, from noise, from the never-ending stream of what everyone else is doing. Edison sat in labs, alone. Da Vinci sketched in solitude. Beethoven composed in storms of loneliness. Why? Because genius is not found in reaction. It is found in creation, and creation requires space. Mental space, emotional space, sacred space. You cannot hear your calling if you're constantly drowning in someone else's. So shut the door. Put the phone down. Kill the need to be seen. And listen, there is a voice inside you, raw, divine, unfiltered, that has been trying to speak to you for years, but it will not compete for your attention. If you keep avoiding solitude, you will keep avoiding yourself. And genius does not exist in crowdsourced identity. Here's the price tag no one talks about. Genius will cost you. Not your money, not your comfort, your former identity. You cannot become who you were born to be and still cling to who you were pretending to be. You lose people. You lose approval. You'll lose your illusions. But what you gain? Clarity, peace, alignment, and finally access to the life only the bold get to live. Moses left the palace, Jobs left college. Bezos left Wall Street. Hill left the conventional to write truth so powerful it echoed for a century. The genius inside you is not playing small to keep you safe. It's roaring to be heard. But first, you must be willing to burn the script you were handed and write your own. That is sacrifice. Not pain for pain's sake, but pain for transformation's sake. The old self must die for the true self to breathe. Let's get brutally honest again. Most people will never do this work. They'll read the quotes. They'll share the videos. They'll nod in agreement, but they won't walk through the fire. Why? Because it's hard to let go of the familiar. Because comfort is addictive. Because mediocrity feels safe even when it's killing you slowly. But you wouldn't be here unless some part of you, some deep primal part, was done pretending you're less than what you are. Let that part rise. Let it guide you past the masses, past the small talk, past the limits. You're not here to blend in. You're here to stand in the rare air where genius breathes freely. It's not lonely up there. It's sacred. You don't get to your inner genius. You become it, not through force, not through hustle porn, but by unlayering, removing everything that isn't truly you. Becoming is subtraction, not addition. It's unlearning the noise, peeling off the fake identities, burning the masks, and standing bare-souled in your truth. The genius you seek isn't in the books you haven't read yet, or the mentors you haven't met. It's in the alignment you've never had. When your thoughts, your words, your actions, your values, and your vision all line up like stars across a midnight sky, then suddenly everything changes. You stop trying to impress. You stop chasing applause. You stop needing proof because you've become it. Not a brand, not a persona, a force of nature. People ask, how do I know if I've tapped into my genius? Here's how. You're not exhausted anymore from being someone you're not. You cannot be powerful and blameful at the same time. Genius only flows through those who take full, relentless responsibility for everything in their life. Not because it's all your fault, but because it's all your move. If you still need someone else to go first, if you're still waiting for conditions to be perfect, if you're still blaming what they did or didn't do, then genius will not work with you, because genius is not a victim. It is a creator. It doesn't beg for perfect weather. It builds in the storm. Take Lincoln, a man who rose from poverty, heartbreak, and repeated defeat to change the destiny of a nation. He didn't wait for the times to get better. He became better and forced the times to rise with him. The moment you say, this is my life, my mind, my mission, my move, you've just unlocked the final gate. And genius finally walks in. You think your inner genius is buried? It's not. It's whispering. You've just gotten too loud to hear it. Every time you ignored that nudge, every time you betrayed your gut to keep peace, every time you shrank when your soul said go, you turned the volume down on your genius. But it's still there. That quiet, rebellious, electric voice that says, this isn't who I am. I was meant for more. I'm done hiding. Let's build something immortal. That voice? That's not fantasy. That's your original blueprint. You were not born a copy. You were born a creation engine divine, sacred, unstoppable, until the world convinced you to mute yourself. But now it's time to turn the dial back up. Not gradually, not someday, now, because genius isn't something you discover in books. It's something you remember in silence. Let's talk about destiny. Not the fantasy kind, the kind that demands everything from you. What if your dreams weren't random? What if your obsessions were divine assignments? What if your pain was part of the map? What if your restlessness was a signal, not a flaw? You think it's ambition. It's not. It's remembrance. A part of your soul already knows where it's meant to go. That's why you're uncomfortable settling. That's why mediocrity feels like a betrayal. Because it is. You weren't sent here to scroll your life away. You weren't sent here to survive. You were sent here to shake the ground, build cathedrals out of ideas, and leave behind a trail of brilliance so fierce that generations will light torches from your flame. Don't you dare die with that still inside you, because destiny doesn't wait forever. It chooses those who choose themselves. What are you really doing all this for? Money? Fame? Validation? No. You're doing it because there's a deeper ache, the ache to matter. Not for a week, not for a moment, but to be the reason someone else doesn't quit. Legacy isn't about buildings with your name on them. It's about souls you helped awaken. Walt Disney died before he ever walked through Disney World. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't live to see the mountaintop, but they planted seeds that bloomed long after they were gone. What seeds are you planting? Because whether you know it or not, every day you either build a monument to your fears or a blueprint for someone else's liberation. Genius is not about you. It's about what comes through you and keeps echoing long after you're gone. The true genius does not stop at self-mastery. It evolves into leadership, not the kind with titles, the kind with weight. Real leadership is not about control. It's about clarity in chaos. It's about walking through fire so others believe they can too. It's about being the one who goes first when no one else will move. You think leadership is a role? No. It's a burden you choose to carry because you remember how it felt to be in the dark, and you refuse to leave anyone behind. Einstein didn't just write equations. He reshaped how we think about reality. Mandela didn't just fight injustice. He forgave it and taught the world what freedom really means. The genius in you isn't selfish. It wants to lift. It aches to serve. It burns to leave behind proof that light can be built in the middle of a storm. You're not just here to rise. You're here to rise others. That's the legacy genius doesn't always talk about, but always leaves behind. At some point, logic ends. And that's where faith begins. Not blind belief, not religious routine. I mean raw, gut-wrenching, storm-walking faith. The kind that lets you leap when no one claps, build when no one believes, and keep going when every voice says stop. Faith is what Walt Disney had when he sketched dreams on napkins no one understood. It's what the Wright brothers had when they stared at the sky and said, why not? It's what you'll need when the applause fades, when the doubt returns, and when the weight of becoming feels unbearable. Genius demands faith, because genius builds futures that don't exist yet. And to walk towards something that hasn't happened is to trust something deeper than proof. Faith is the contract your future makes with your soul. Walk blindly, and I'll meet you halfway. But you've got to walk. This is the point most never reach. Alignment, where your actions, thoughts, values, and vision all match. No more double lives. No more pretending. No more being one thing in public and another behind the scenes. You become whole. And when you're whole, your power becomes magnetic. You attract the right people. You repel the wrong ones. You stop chasing and start pulling reality toward you. When Hill wrote, Think and Grow Rich, he didn't say, think and get lucky. He said, when your mind and purpose are unified, the world bends to meet it. That's alignment. And alignment is rare because it requires honesty, courage, clean hands, clear eyes. But once you get it, your genius flows like a river that refuses to dry. Let this truth strike hard. You don't become a genius once. You become it again and again. Every time you grow past the version of you that thought it was the final form. Genius reinvents. That's why Beethoven kept composing when he went deaf That's why Picasso shifted styles again and again. That's why Madonna, Musk, and Da Vinci never stayed the same. Because the moment you lock yourself into a box, you bury the very energy that made you powerful in the first place. You are not a brand. You are not a label. You are a living revolution, and revolutions don't stay safe. The path to unlocking your true genius isn't in doubling down on what you've always done. It's in becoming who you've never dared to be. Again and again and again, this is where it starts to feel divine. Because when genius fully awakens, your life no longer feels like effort. It feels like calling. You're no longer creating for success. You're creating because it's who you are. You don't need to be motivated. You're moved. You don't need permission. You become the permission. And in this space, work becomes worship. Time disappears. Fear dies. Because you're no longer performing, you're channeling the same force that moved Da Vinci's hand, that danced through Mozart's keys, that whispered ideas to Tesla at midnight, now moves through you. Not because you're better, but because you said yes to the unknown, said yes to the pain, said yes to the sacred duty of showing the world what a life on fire looks like. This isn't ego. This is ecstasy, the kind that only comes when your soul finally finds its work. Here's a question most people are too afraid to ask. What happens to your genius when you die? Because if all you build dies with you, you didn't create, you consumed. Real genius leaves fingerprints on eternity. Michelangelo hasn't touched a chisel in 500 years. His genius still draws crowds. Napoleon Hill has been gone for decades. His thoughts still build empires. Martin Luther King Jr. was silenced, but his voice still shakes the earth. Why? Because genius, when fully realized, is not limited to time. It becomes timeless. When you create from truth, from obsession, from deep spiritual alignment, your work becomes a mirror for generations not even born yet. And every time you hesitate, every time you withhold your gift because you're afraid of criticism or imperfection or not being understood, you steal something sacred from the future, because your genius is not for you. It's for them. There is a moment in every journey where the hero must burn the bridge behind them. This is that moment, not a hype-filled moment, not a flashy one, a quiet, sacred, unbreakable decision. I will never again abandon my genius to feel safe. I will never again negotiate with mediocrity. I will not wait to be chosen. I choose myself now. This is not a motivational speech. This is a line in the sand. Because the truth is, you already know what you must do. You already know what version of you must die for the real one to rise. But knowing isn't enough. Wishing isn't enough. Even writing it down isn't enough. You must decide and then prove that decision with blood, sweat, and presence. This is the divorce from your former self. This is the doorway that doesn't open from the other side. Once you cross it, there is no turning back. And that's the point. Because nothing extraordinary is born in a life with exits left open. It's time. No more theories. No more potential. No more one-day promises. This is the moment you stop searching and start summoning. You don't need another guru. You don't need another permission slip. You don't need to be more ready. You need to command your genius to rise. Right now, not softly, not with apologies, but with authority. Say it. I know who I am. I remember what I carry. I summon the fire I was born with now. No more shrinking, no more waiting, no more explaining. I will become what I was created to be with or without applause. Because when you speak with total alignment, the universe doesn't argue. It obeys, and genius responds. It starts to move your hands, your words, your life. It reveals opportunities, connections, clarity, not because they appeared, but because you finally did. This is not magic. This is alignment with truth. You were never meant to be average. You were meant to summon something immortal. And now the gates are open. Most people go through life as reactors, constantly adjusting to the world, waiting for signals, hoping to be picked. But genius doesn't wait for energy. It generates it. Genius doesn't follow weather patterns. It creates climates. From this moment forward, you stop being the effect and start being the cause. You own your thoughts. You own your standards. You own your discipline, your time, your voice, your mission. You stop asking if you're ready. You declare that you are. You stop chasing love. You become so deeply aligned that love is drawn to your certainty. You stop trying to manifest genius because you embody it. This is ownership. This is the moment when you finally say, no more waiting for a miracle. I am the miracle. I move, I act, I lead, I create. The world doesn't need another servant of fear. It needs a leader of light, one who owns their fire without shame. And if you won't step into that role, the world goes darker than it has to. This is not a temporary awakening. This is not a Monday motivation. This is a permanent line in the concrete of your existence. Your standard just changed forever. You no longer tolerate the diluted version of yourself. You no longer allow comfort to dress itself as self-care. You no longer confuse inaction for strategy or fear for caution. You are no longer available for average. You've tasted your power now. You've heard your voice now. You've glimpsed the magnitude of what's inside you now. There is no going back to the smaller self who needed a reason to rise. From here on out, you set your standard at genius. You show up as if the world depends on it because your world does. And anytime life tries to pull you back down, you whisper, I remember who I am. I remember what I carry. I rise every time. Let others lower their bar to fit in. You raise yours until the world has no choice but to meet it. There's one final truth. Your genius is not yours to keep. It was given to you to use, to embody, to pass on. You were born not just to build, but to light torches in other people's dark. You may never know their names. You may never hear their applause, but someone someday will whisper, because of them, I didn't quit. Because of them, I remembered who I am. Because of them, I finally lit my own flame. And in that moment, your genius will live again. Not in your bank account, not in your bio, but in a stranger's breakthrough because you chose to burn bright when it would have been easier to stay dim. That is immortality. And that is your final decision. Will you bury the flame that was entrusted to you? Or will you set it ablaze and make this short life echo louder than centuries? So now, here we are. No recap, no gentle goodbyes. Just you, your reflection, and the door you've been afraid to walk through for years. Everything you need is already within you, but it's not enough to know it. Now you live it. You own it. You become it. So stand up. Walk forward. Don't ask for a sign. Be the sign. And when the world looks confused by your fire, you look back and say, I remembered who I am. I summoned what I carry. I unleashed the genius I was born to give. And I will never go dark again.